There's something extraordinary that happens when we begin to notice the little things, not just glance at them, not just pass them by, but really notice them. We live in a world that constantly tells us to look for the big moments, the huge breakthroughs, the dramatic changes. But the truth is, the real beauty of life often hides in the quiet details. The warmth of sunlight on your skin in the early morning. The laughter you share with a friend over something silly. That unexpected message from someone who just wanted to check in and say, "I was thinking about you." These are not just random occurrences. They are threads of God's goodness woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. The challenge is we miss them, not because they aren't there, but because we've trained our minds to chase what's next instead of appreciating what's now. Gratitude changes that. It turns the ordinary into something miraculous. It's like adjusting the lens on a camera. What was once blurry suddenly becomes clear, and you start to see that every moment carries the fingerprints of a God who cares deeply for you. Think about the times in your life when you've been overwhelmed by problems. You were so focused on the storm that you didn't notice the small signs of provision around you. Maybe it was a friend who showed up when you didn't ask, or an opportunity that seemed insignificant at first but opened a bigger door later. Those aren't coincidences, they are reminders. And when you live with a heart that's tuned to notice them, you stop feeling like life is something happening to you, and you start feeling like life is something happening for you. I once met someone who told me they started writing down 3 things they were grateful for every night. At first, it felt forced. Some days, all they could think of was, "I woke up today," or "I had something to eat." But over time, those small acknowledgements began to build a habit of looking for God's goodness in every corner of their life. A morning walk became more than exercise. It became an encounter with creation. A quiet evening at home wasn't boring anymore. It was a moment of rest that their soul needed. What changed wasn't their circumstances, it was their perspective. When you start noticing these blessings, you realize that God's goodness isn't just reserved for the days when everything goes your way. It's not a reward you earn after a hard season. It's a constant presence even in the middle of that season. Gratitude has a way of anchoring you in the present while keeping you hopeful for the future. It tells your heart, yes, I still have needs. Yes, I still have prayers waiting for answers. But right here, right now, I can see evidence that I'm not forgotten. And here's the beauty: the more you practice gratitude, the more it multiplies. You start to notice patterns of grace that you once overlooked. You realize that the smile from a stranger, the song that played at just the right moment, or even the delay that kept you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. All of it is part of a bigger picture. Gratitude teaches you that life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Living in God's goodness through gratitude also shifts how you interact with others. When you're aware of how much you've been blessed, it becomes harder to complain, harder to judge, and harder to hold back kindness. You naturally start extending to others what you've received yourself. You become the smile for the stranger. You become the person who sends that "just thinking of you" message. You become the reason someone else sees God's goodness in their day. But here's the truth: this doesn't happen automatically. Gratitude is a choice. Every day, you decide whether to focus on what's missing or on what's present. You decide whether to complain about what you lack or to celebrate what you have. And the decision you make shapes the life you experience. Because what you focus on grows. When you focus on lack, lack multiplies. When you focus on goodness, goodness multiplies. So maybe the real question isn't, is God being good to me? Maybe the real question is, am I noticing how good He already is? Because once you start seeing His goodness in the small things, you'll realize they were never small at all. And when you live that way, awake, grateful, and aware, you stop chasing joy and start living in it. There's a moment in all of our lives when the path ahead feels hidden. We look around and nothing makes sense. The job opportunity we prayed for didn't happen. The relationship we thought would last fell apart. The plans we made so carefully are suddenly scattered. And in that moment, it's tempting to believe that maybe we've been forgotten, that maybe we've taken a wrong turn and God isn't leading us anymore. But the truth is, some of the greatest demonstrations of God's goodness happen in the seasons when we can't see where He's taking us. We all love the idea of a clear path, straight roads, predictable signs, and perfect timing. But life rarely works like that. Sometimes God lets the path curve out of sight, because if we saw everything ahead, we'd either run too fast and miss the lessons, or we'd turn back in fear before we reach the blessing. There are times He shields us from knowing the whole picture, not to frustrate us, but to prepare us. The waiting, the uncertainty, the closed doors, they're not punishments. They're part of a divine process. Think about the times in your past when something didn't go the way you wanted. At first, you were disappointed, maybe even angry. But months or years later, you look back and thought, now I see why that had to happen. The relationship that ended made space for a healthier one. The job you didn't get opened the door for something far more aligned with your purpose. The move you resisted turned out to be the best decision of your life. In the moment, it felt like loss. In hindsight, it was redirection. One of the hardest things we'll ever learn is that God's no is not rejection. It's protection. And His wait is not neglect. It's preparation. We're so used to instant results that when God takes His time, we think He's absent. But a delay is often His way of aligning every piece so that when the answer comes, it fits perfectly into our lives. The same way an artist doesn't rush a masterpiece, God doesn't rush the story He's writing for you. I met someone who once described this beautifully. They said, when you can't see the path, imagine God holding a lantern. He lights just enough of the road for you to take the next step, not the whole journey, just the next step. That's trust. That's faith. Because it means moving forward even when you don't have the full map, believing that the one guiding you knows exactly where you're going. And here's the thing, trust isn't built in moments when everything is clear. Trust is forged in the dark, in the moments when the only thing you have to hold on to is God's character, His promises, and the evidence of His goodness in your past. You might not know the when or the how, but you can be sure of the who. The same God who carried you before will carry you again. When you begin to see life through this lens, even the detours start to feel different. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this teaching me? How is this shaping me? That shift changes everything. Suddenly, you're no longer just enduring the waiting. You're growing in it. You're learning patience, resilience, and faith. You're becoming the version of yourself who will be ready for the very thing you've been praying for. And I want to say this, sometimes the path is hidden not because you're lost, but because you're being led somewhere you never would have gone on your own. There are blessings that don't look like blessings at first. There are seasons where the only way forward is through the uncertainty. And it's in those seasons that God often works the deepest transformations in our hearts. I know it's hard. I know the waiting feels heavy. But trust me, nothing is wasted. Every delay, every closed door, every unexpected turn, it's all shaping a story that will make sense one day. You won't just see God's goodness at the end of the path. You'll realize it was carrying you the whole way. So even when you can't see the road ahead, keep walking. One of the most subtle yet powerful shifts you can make in life is moving from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. Scarcity says, I'll never have enough. I'm missing something. I can't move forward until I get more. Abundance says, what I have is enough for today. Who I am is enough for today. And what's meant for me is already on its way. Living in God's goodness means believing that you are not empty, that you are not lacking, and that your worth isn't determined by what you collect, but by who you are in His eyes. The truth is, scarcity isn't always about money or possessions. It's a mindset that can creep into every area of our lives. It shows up in relationships when we think, if I give too much love, there won't be enough left for me. It shows up in opportunities when we think, if someone else succeeds, it means there's less success available for me. It shows up in self-worth when we think, I need to be more, do more, have more before I can be happy. But here's the reality. God's goodness isn't a pie with a limited number of slices. There's no shortage in His supply. His blessings don't run out, and His love doesn't have a quota. When you begin to see life through the lens of abundance, something changes inside you. You stop comparing your life to others because you realize you're not in competition for God's attention or blessings. You start celebrating others' wins instead of feeling threatened by them. You find peace in knowing that what's meant for you won't pass you by, and what passes you by was never meant for you in the first place. I once spoke with someone who told me they used to spend their days scrolling through social media, feeling smaller with every post they saw, every picture of someone traveling, every announcement of a promotion, every perfect family portrait made them feel like they were falling behind. But then they made a choice. Instead of seeing those moments as proof they were missing out, they began seeing them as proof that good things were possible. If someone else was experiencing joy, it meant joy was in the neighborhood. And if joy was in the neighborhood, it could find its way to their door too. That's abundance. It's shifting from envy to expectancy. This doesn't mean ignoring your needs or pretending you have everything you want. It means living with the deep awareness that even in the waiting, even in the gaps, you already have something to be thankful for. And here's the beautiful part. When you focus on what you have instead of what you lack, it multiplies. Gratitude opens the door for more because you're no longer living with clenched fists, trying to hold on to what you have out of fear. You're living with open hands, ready to receive and ready to give. Living from abundance also changes the way you make decisions. Scarcity makes decisions from fear. Fear of missing out, fear of not having enough, fear of losing what you have. Abundance makes decisions from trust. Trust that there will be enough for tomorrow. Trust that the right opportunities will come at the right time. Trust that you're equipped for whatever is ahead. This shift brings freedom. You stop hoarding time, energy, or kindness because you know you can never run out of what truly matters. Think about it. When you believe there's more than enough love, you give it freely. When you believe there's more than enough joy, you share it without hesitation. When you believe there's more than enough opportunity, you help others find theirs without worrying it will take away from yours. And when you live like that, you become a reflection of the very goodness you've been receiving. It's easy to live in scarcity when the world around us is constantly telling us we're behind, that we need to catch up, that we're incomplete without something more. But when you anchor yourself in God's goodness, you realize you're already living in abundance. You realize that enough is not a number you'll reach someday. It's a state of heart you can choose today. And the beautiful irony is, when you live from that place of abundance, more always seems to find you. Opportunities appear. Relationships deepen. Joy becomes a constant companion, not because you're chasing more, but because you're living like you already have it. So instead of asking, what am I missing? Start asking, what am I overlooking that's already here? Because once you see it, you'll realize you've been surrounded by abundance all along. When you truly start living in God's goodness, something happens inside you that you can't contain. It doesn't just stay within you, it overflows. It's like filling a cup so full that it spills over the edges without you even trying. And when that happens, you naturally begin to share it. Not because someone told you to, not because it's a rule or a responsibility, but because it's the most natural response to being so deeply blessed. Think about the last time someone did something unexpectedly kind for you. Maybe they paid for your coffee. Maybe they called you just to say they appreciated you. Maybe they listened when you needed to talk without judgment, without rushing you. That moment probably stayed with you longer than you realized. And for a while after, you found yourself wanting to pass that feeling along to someone else. That's the way goodness works. It doesn't like to stay still. It moves. It multiplies. When you live in God's goodness, you become aware of how much you've been given, not just in material things, but in love, in grace, in second chances. And when you realize how much has been poured into your life, it changes the way you see people. You stop looking at them as strangers, obstacles, or competitors, and you start seeing them as opportunities. Opportunities to give away what you've been given. Opportunities to be the proof in someone's day that kindness still exists, that hope is still alive, that God is still good. I remember meeting someone who told me they made a decision years ago to never leave a room without making it lighter. It could be a smile, a word of encouragement, a prayer, or even just listening without interrupting. They said they wanted every person they encountered to walk away feeling just a little more seen, a little more valued. And the beautiful thing was, they didn't start this because they had a perfect life. They started it in the middle of one of the hardest seasons they had ever faced. They told me, I realized that if I kept waiting until life was perfect before giving, I might never give it all. So I decided to give anyway. That's what living in God's goodness looks like. It's not about waiting for the right circumstances. It's about realizing you already have enough to make a difference. You might not be able to change someone's whole life, but you can change their moment. And moments matter. Sometimes a single moment of kindness can shift someone's entire perspective. And here's what's amazing. When you give from a place of fullness, it doesn't leave you empty. It actually fills you more. The more you pour out, the more room you make for God to pour in. It's not a transaction, it's a cycle. The love, the joy, the peace you give away always comes back, often in ways you never expected. But I get it. Sometimes we hold back. We tell ourselves, when I'm doing better, I'll give more. When I'm happier, I'll spread more joy. When I have more time, I'll be more present for people. And the danger is we keep waiting for a future version of ourselves to be the one who gives, forgetting that the power to give is in the person we are right now. You don't need more to be generous. You just need to decide that what you have is worth sharing. When you live this way, people start to notice, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because the world isn't used to this kind of love. We live in a culture that often says, look out for yourself first. But when you live in God's goodness, you start to see the beauty in looking out for others too. You realize that kindness isn't a resource you run out of. Encouragement isn't something you should ration. And love. Love is infinite when it's coming from the source. So every day you have a choice. You can keep the goodness you've received to yourself, or you can let it overflow into every conversation, every interaction, every place you step into. Because sometimes the way God shows his goodness to someone else is through you. And the more you live like that, the more you realize you're not just living in God's goodness, you're becoming it.